Rain. Always rain in Seattle when the world decides to end. The shipping containers at West Dock stood like steel gravestones in the November storm. Water hammered down on corrugated metal, creating a symphony of chaos that drowned out everything except the gunfire. Elena Carter ran, 24 years old. Waitress uniform soaked through, blood spreading across her left shoulder like a crimson flower blooming on gray fabric. Behind her, men shouted in Italian. Ahead, more gunfire. The kind that comes from automatic weapons, not handguns. The kind that says someone brought a war to the waterfront. She stumbled over a puddle, caught herself on a container wall. Her hand left a bloody print on the steel. The rain tried to wash it away, but couldn't work fast enough. Marcus! Her voice tore through the storm, raw, desperate. The voice of someone who had already lost everything and was about to lose the one thing that remained. Through the maze of containers, she saw him. 32 years old, 6'2", tactical black gear instead of the Tom Ford suit she'd first seen him in. Two pistols raised, face carved from rage and something else. Something that looked like fear. He turned at her voice. Their eyes met across 50 feet of rain and bullets and the space between two different worlds. And in that moment, Elena Carter understood something her father had tried to teach her 7 years ago. That honor isn't about the choices you make when life is easy. It's about the choices you make when a single decision will cost you evermore. The bullet that should have killed Marcus Dante was already in the air. Elena had less than a second to decide. She ran forward. She didn't think. Thinking was for people who had time. She just moved, throwing herself across the open ground with no cover, no protection, nothing but the absolute certainty that she could not let him die. The impact spun her like a top. Fire exploded in her shoulder. Her legs forgot how to work. The concrete rose up to meet her face, and the last thing she heard before the darkness came was Marcus screaming her name. Frank's Diner sat on the corner of 4th and Pike like a grease stain that refused to wash out. The neon sign buzzed, always buzzing, had been buzzing for the 17 years Frank had owned the place, and probably for the 20 years before that. The kind of sound that gets into your bones. That becomes part of the soundtrack of your life, whether you want it to or not. Elena Carter counted her tips at the back counter. 11:45 p.m. Tuesday night. The dinner rush had ended 3 hours ago. The late-night drunks wouldn't start arriving for another hour. In that dead space between chaos and chaos, the diner held its breath. $47, 12 hours of work. 12 hours of fake smiles and aching feet, and customers who thought a pretty face meant they could say anything they wanted. 12 hours for $47. She folded the bills carefully. Ones and fives mostly. A single 10 that some businessman had left, probably by accident. She put them in the zippered pocket of her apron, the one that didn't have a hole. Her phone buzzed. She didn't need to look at it. She'd listened to the voicemail twice already. Mister? Patterson's voice, sharp as a knife and just as friendly. Elena, I'm not running a charity. You're 2 months behind. You have until Friday or I'm putting your mother's hospital bed on the curb. Don't test me. Friday was tomorrow. $47 would not save her, would not save her mother, would not stop the landlord or the debt collectors or the electric company or any of the other wolves circling her life. But it was $47 more than she'd had this morning. Elena wiped down table 4 for the 3rd time. The formica was chipped, stained with coffee rings that no amount of scrubbing would remove. Old man Jenkins usually sat here, nursing a single cup of decaf for 3 hours while he did the crossword puzzle. But Jenkins had died last month. Heart attack. Right there in booth 7. The paramedics said he was probably dead before he hit the floor. Elena wondered if that was a blessing, to go that fast, to not have time to be afraid. The bell above the door chimed. She looked up, ready with her server's smile, the one that never reached her eyes anymore. And then she forgot how to breathe. The man who walked in didn't belong here, didn't belong anywhere near 4th and Pike. He belonged in magazines, in penthouse apartments, in places where the furniture cost more than Elena made in a year. 6'2", maybe 32, 33 years old. Dark hair, wet from the rain but somehow still perfect. Eyes the color of winter. Gray. Cold. The kind of eyes that had seen things and decided not to care about them anymore. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. Probably had been. The fabric moved with him, whispered when he walked. No wrinkles despite the Seattle downpour outside. Water beaded on the shoulders and rolled off like the cloth had been designed to repel reality itself. His shoes were Italian leather. Elena knew because Her father had been a mechanic and he'd taught her to recognize quality, to understand the difference between something real and something pretending. These shoes were real. The watch on his left wrist caught the fluorescent light. Platinum, heavy, the kind of watch you could trade for a car. A nice car. He scanned the diner with those winter eyes, taking inventory, calculating. His gaze passed over Frank behind the grill, over the two truckers in booth 2, over Elena standing there with a dish rag in her hand. And then his eyes came back to her, stopped. Something shifted in his expression. Not much, just a flicker. Like he'd been looking for something and found something else instead. He walked to table 4, sat down in an old man Jenkins seat, placed his phone on the sticky formica surface, screen down. His hands were clean, manicured. But there were scars on the knuckles. Old scars, the kind you get from hitting things. Or people. Elena grabbed the coffee pot and walked over on legs that suddenly felt like they were made of water. "Coffee, sir?" Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. She hated that. Hated how his presence made her feel like she was shrinking. He didn't look up, just tapped one long finger on the empty mug. Elena poured. Her hand shook. Just a little. Just enough. A single drop of hot coffee splashed onto his cuff, the pristine white cuff of his $2,000 shirt. The diner went silent. Frank stopped scraping the grill. The trucker stopped eating. Even the neon sign seemed to pause its eternal buzz. Elena froze. The man looked at the stain, brown against white, spreading slowly through the expensive fabric. Then he looked up at her. Those winter eyes held no anger. That would have been better. Anger she understood. Anger had rules. You apologized, you fixed it, you moved on. But there was no anger in his eyes, just a profound, chilling indifference. He looked at her the way a surgeon looks at a tumor, something to be removed, something that didn't matter enough to warrant emotion. I'm so sorry," Elena stammered. She grabbed a napkin. Her hands were shaking harder now. "I'll get club soda. I can get that out. I promise I can." "Leave it." His voice was low, a baritone that vibrated through the table, through the floor, through her chest. "Sir, really, I said leave it." He checked his watch, that platinum piece that probably cost more than her entire life. Then he glanced at his phone as it lit up with a call. He answered without looking at Elena again. "I told you the shipment stays at the docks until I say otherwise." Pause. His jaw tightened, the only sign of emotion. "If Vincent touches it, I'll burn his house down with him inside." He ended the call, looked at Elena like she was a problem he'd forgotten about. "Check." Elena's hand shook as she pulled out her order pad. Her pen wouldn't work. She scribbled twice before the ink flowed. "That's $8.50, sir." He didn't reach for a wallet. Instead, he reached inside his jacket. Elena's heart stopped. For one terrible second, she thought he was reaching for a gun. But he pulled out a money clip instead, thick with cash, $100 bills. More money than Elena had seen in one place in her entire life. He peeled off a 20, dropped it on the table like it was trash. "Keep the change." He stood, loomed over her. The air around him smelled of expensive tobacco and rain and something metallic, like gun oil. His phone buzzed again. He answered as he walked toward the door. "I don't care what Vincent wants. He doesn't make decisions in this city. I do." The bell chimed as he left. The door swung shut. The diner exhaled. Elena stood there for a long moment, staring at the $20 bill. $11.50 tip for an $8.50 meal. More than she'd made all night. She reached for it, and that's when she saw the envelope. It was manila, unsealed, tucked under the napkin dispenser where it must have slid when he reached for his money clip. Plain, unremarkable, except for the weight. Elena looked at the door. The man was gone. Disappeared into the rain like he'd never been there at all. She looked at Frank. He'd gone back to scraping the grill, his back turned. The truckers were arguing about a football game. Nobody was watching. Elena picked up the envelope. It felt heavy, substantial, like it contained something important. She shouldn't look. She knew she shouldn't. It wasn't hers. He'd left it by accident, and she should run after him and return it just like she should have done with anything that didn't belong to her. But her fingers were already opening the flap. Just a peek. Just to see what it was. Just to know. Her heart stopped. Cash. $100 bills. Stacks of them. Bound with rubber bands, Elena's world narrowed to that envelope. To the money inside. To the number that her brain was calculating even as her conscience screamed at her to stop. $10,000. Maybe more. $10,000. Her mother's surgery. the back rent, the utilities they'd shut off last month, the medications Grace Carter needed but couldn't afford, the physical therapy that might give her mother another year of being able to walk. $10,000. All of it right there, in her hands, and nobody knew. There were no cameras in Frank's. Frank was too cheap for that. The man was clearly some kind of criminal. Who else talked about burning houses down? Who else carried that kind of cash? If she kept it, she wasn't stealing from a saint. She was stealing from a sinner to save her mother. Take it. The voice in her head was seductive. Reasonable. It made perfect sense. He won't even miss it. Look at that watch he was wearing. Look at that suit. $10,000 is nothing to him. It's everything to you. Take it. Elena's hands shook as she shoved the envelope under her apron. She could walk out the back door right now, could pay Mr. Patterson in cash tonight, could buy her mother the good pain medication, the kind that actually worked, could save her. But then she saw him again in her mind, those cold winter eyes, that voice on the phone. If Dominic touches it, I'll burn his house down with him inside. If a man like that found out she took his money, he wouldn't sue her. He wouldn't call the police. He would come for her, and he would find her. Elena looked at the clock, 11:58, 2 minutes left on her shift. She looked at the money. She looked at the door where the man had vanished into the rain. Fear was a powerful motivator, but desperation was stronger. And underneath the desperation, underneath the fear, there was something else, something she'd forgotten she had. Her father's voice, 7 years old but clear as yesterday. In this world, all you have is your word. Money comes and goes, but honor is forever. Sal, I'm taking my break, she yelled. You've got 2 minutes left, Frank shouted back. Elena didn't listen. She grabbed her coat, clutched the envelope against her chest like a shield, and ran out into the storm. The chase, the rain hit her like a physical blow. November in Seattle, cold enough to hurt, wet enough to soak through clothes in seconds. Elena's uniform stuck to her skin. Her sneakers splashed through puddles that hadn't been there this morning. The streetlights reflected in the water like smeared oil paintings. She scanned the street. There, half a block down, idling at a red light, a black sedan, sleek, expensive. The kind of car that whispered money instead of shouting it. A Maybach. Elena knew cars. Her father had taught her before the accident, before the scaffolding collapsed at the construction site, before 3 men died and her whole world changed. That car cost more than the entire city block she lived on. The taillights glowed red in the rain. The light was about to turn green. Elena ran. Her worn sneakers pounded pavement. Her feet splashed through freezing puddles. The envelope pressed against her ribs, through her coat. Hey, sir, wait! Her voice was swallowed by wind and traffic. The light turned green. The car began to roll forward. No, 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 no. Elena pushed harder. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. She cut across the sidewalk, nearly slipping on a discarded newspaper, and sprinted into the middle of the intersection. She waved her arms frantically. The car stopped. Not a screech, not a panic stop, just ceased moving with predatory grace. Like a shark that had decided to pause and examine something small and stupid enough to swim directly into its path. Elena reached the passenger window, gasping for air. Water streamed down her face. Her hair was plastered to her skull. She bent over, hands on her knees, trying to catch her breath. The window rolled down. Not all the way, just 3 inches. The face that appeared wasn't the man from the diner. It was a driver. A wall of muscle with a shaved head and a scar running through his eyebrow. He looked at her like she was a bug on the windshield. Get lost, the driver growled. We don't have change. No, Elena wheezed. The man inside, he left something. The driver hesitated. He glanced into the rearview mirror. A second later, the back window rolled down. The man in the charcoal suit sat there. He was holding a crystal tumbler of amber liquid. He looked at Elena, shivering in the rain with mild annoyance. You. The recognition was barely there, flat, disinterested, the waitress who spilled the coffee. You left this, Elena said. She pulled the damp manila envelope from under her coat, held it out through the rain. The man stared at the envelope, then he looked at her face. For the first time, something flickered in those winter eyes. Not gratitude, confusion. He pressed a button. The door clicked, unlocked. Get in. What? No, I just wanted to return. I said get in, unless you want to discuss my business in the middle of an intersection while half of Seattle watches. Elena looked around. A car behind them honked. She looked at the envelope in her hand. then at the dark, leather-clad interior of the car. Every instinct screamed run, but she was already wet, already cold, and honestly, she was tired of being afraid of everything. She opened the door and slid onto the plush leather seat. The car was warm. It smelled of rich leather and that same metallic cologne. The door locked automatically with a heavy thud that felt final. The car began to move. The interior was like stepping into another world. Napa leather seats, hand-stitched, soft ambient lighting in cool blue, a partition between the driver and the back that was probably bulletproof. The man sat across from her, not beside her, across, maintaining distance, maintaining control. He took the envelope from her hand without touching her fingers. He didn't count the money, just weighed it in his palm. Why? The question hung in the air between them. Why what? Elena asked. Her voice was small in the quiet cabin. Why bring it back? He turned to face her fully. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His jawline was sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes were intelligent, probing, like he could see through skin and bone to whatever truth lived underneath. You looked inside. I saw the way your eyes dilated in the diner. You know how much is in here. Elena said nothing. $10,000, he continued. His voice was soft, but somehow more dangerous for it. That's a lot of money for a waitress at Frank's. You could have paid off your debts, fixed your teeth, moved out of the dump. Elena bristled. My teeth are fine, and I'm not a thief. Everyone is a thief when they're desperate enough. He leaned forward slightly. So tell me the truth. Did you bring it back because you're a saint, or because you thought I'd come back for it and hurt you? I brought it back because I didn't earn it, Elena snapped. The fear was giving way to irritation. Because my mother raised me better than that. Now, if you're done psychoanalyzing me, can you let me out? I'm going to get fired. The man stared at her, long, uncomfortable. The car was speeding up, heading toward the highway on ramp. Stop the car, the man said to the driver. The driver pulled over immediately onto the shoulder of the dark road. You're an anomaly, Sophie Miller, the man said. Elena frowned. My name is Elena, Elena Carter. He glanced at her chest, at her name tag. My mistake. He opened the envelope and pulled out a single stack of bills, held it out. $1,000 for your trouble. Elena looked at the money. God, she needed it. But taking it now felt wrong. Felt like hush money, even though she didn't know what she was hushing. No, thank you. I didn't do it for a reward. The man laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. A waitress who returns $10,000 and refuses a reward. Now I've seen everything. He shoved the money into her wet apron pocket before she could protest. Take it. Consider it a tip for the coffee you didn't spill on my pants. Who are you? Elena asked. Her hand hovered over the pocket. The man was silent for a long moment. Then he said, My name is Marcus, Marcus Dante. The blood drained from Elena's face. Everyone in the city knew the name Dante. The Dante family wasn't just the Mafia. They were the architects of the city's underworld. They owned the docks, the construction unions, the politicians. Marcus Dante was the eldest son, the one who'd inherited when his father died 3 years ago. The rumors said he'd killed a man when he was 16. Other rumors said he'd killed a lot more than one. She was sitting in a car with the devil. Marcus, she whispered. Get out, Elena. His voice dropped to a dangerous chill. Before I change my mind about letting you go. Elena scrambled for the door handle, practically fell out of the car onto the wet pavement. As she slammed the door, the window rolled down one last time. Elena, she froze. You didn't see me tonight. You didn't find any money. And you certainly didn't get in this car. Do we understand each other? Yes, she squeaked. Good, because if you breathe a word of this, well, you heard what I said about burning houses down. The window rolled up. The Maybach peeled away, disappearing into the rainy night like a phantom. Elena stood on the side of the highway, clutching the $1,000 in her pocket. She was soaking wet, terrified. Miles from the diner, she thought it was over. She thought she had survived her brush with the darkness. She was wrong. The gray van slowed down behind her. Elena didn't hear it over the sound of the rain and traffic. Didn't see it until the side door slid open. Didn't feel the hands grab her until they were already lifting her off the ground. She tried to scream. A hand clamped over her mouth. Rough, calloused, smelling of cigarettes and garlic. She bit down hard. The man cursed but didn't let go. Something sharp pricked her neck. The world started to spin. Her legs went numb. Her arms went heavy. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her completely was a pair of boots hitting the pavement. Boots that were muddy, worn, definitely not Italian leather. Elena woke to the smell of rust and seawater. Her head felt like it had been split open with an axe. She tried to move her hands and found them zip-tied to the arms of a metal chair. She blinked her eyes open. The room was dim, illuminated by a single swinging bulb. It looked like a storage container or a warehouse office. Dust motes danced in the yellow light. "She's awake." The voice was gravelly, rough, nothing like Marcus Dante's smooth baritone. Elena jerked her head up. 3 men stood in front of her. In the center was a man who looked like a bulldog in a cheap suit. Thick neck, nose that had been broken so many times it zigzagged across his face like a lightning bolt. Where am I?" Elena croaked. Her throat was dry. "You're in the deep end, sweetheart." The bulldog grinned. His teeth were yellow. "Now let's talk about your boyfriend, Marcus." "I don't know him. I just waited on him. I gave him his money back." "We know," the bulldog said. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of garlic and sweat and something sour. "We were watching him. We've been watching Marcus for weeks, waiting for him to make a drop." Elena's stomach dropped. "He left that envelope for a contact, a bribe for a judge. And you stupid little girl. You picked it up and ran it back to him." The envelope wasn't a mistake. Marcus hadn't lost the money. He'd left it there on purpose. It was a drop, and she had ruined it. "I didn't know," Elena cried. "I thought he forgot it." The bulldog laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Because you interfered, the judge didn't get his payment. The deal fell through. Marcus is vulnerable right now." He leaned in, his face inches from hers. "And you're the only person who got close to him tonight. You sat in his car. You talked to him." His breath was hot on her face. "What did he tell you?" "Nothing. He just told me to get out." "Liar!" He backhanded her. The force of the blow knocked the chair sideways. Elena screamed as she hit the concrete floor. Pain exploded in her cheekbone. "Pick her up," the bulldog ordered. The 2 goons hauled the chair back upright. Elena was sobbing now, tears mixed with blood from her split lip. "Marcus Dante is a paranoid man," the bulldog said, pacing west. "He doesn't let strangers into his Maybach unless they're useful, or unless he trusts them." He paused. "Which one is it, Elena?" "Neither, please. I just want to go home to my mom." The bulldog pulled a knife from his belt, curved, wicked. "Here's how this works. You're going to be our little message. We're going to send a video to Marcus. You're going to tell him that you work for us now, that you stole the drop money for us." "But I didn't. It doesn't matter what's true." The bulldog smiled. "It matters what he believes. If he thinks you betrayed him, he'll come for you. And when he comes for you, we'll be waiting to put a bullet in his pretty head." He held the knife to her throat. The metal was cold. "So smile for the camera, Elena. You're about to become famous." One of the goons pulled out a smartphone and started recording. "Say it," the bulldog commanded. He pressed the blade enough to draw a bead of blood. "Say this. Marcus, thanks for the quiche. Vincent sends his regards." Elena looked at the camera lens. She thought about her mother, alone in their apartment, waiting for her to come home. She thought about Marcus Dante's cold eyes. If she did this, Marcus would kill her. If she didn't, the bulldog would kill her right now. She took a shaky breath. "Marcus," she whimpered into the camera. I. She couldn't do it. She couldn't lie. Not when the lie would start a war. She stared straight into the lens, her eyes blazing with sudden defiance. "Marcus, it's a trap. He wants to kill you. Don't come." "Turn it off," the bulldog roared in fury. "Cut the feed." He turned on Elena, face purple with rage. "You stupid—" He raised the knife. Elena squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the end. Crash. The metal door of the warehouse exploded inward. A cloud of smoke and debris filled the room. Through the smoke, silhouettes moved with terrifying speed. The sound of suppressed gunfire echoed off the metal walls. Thip, thip, thip. The 2 goons dropped to the floor before they could even draw their weapons. The bulldog spun around. He grabbed Elena, using her as a human shield. The knife pressed hard against her jugular. "Back off," he screamed. "I'll slit her throat. I swear to God." The smoke cleared slowly. Standing in the jagged opening of the door, flanked by 4 men with assault rifles, was Marcus Dante. He wasn't wearing the charcoal suit anymore. Tactical black gear, Kevlar vest, a pistol in each hand. He looked like the angel of death. "Let her go, Vincent," Marcus said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. So the bulldog's name was Vincent. "You ruined everything, Dante," Vincent spat. "This city was supposed to be mine." "It was never yours. You're a bottom feeder." Marcus took a step forward. "Stay back." Vincent pressed the knife harder. Elena felt warm blood trickle down her neck. She gasped. Marcus's eyes locked onto Elena's. For a microsecond, the ice in them cracked. He saw the blood. He saw the terror, and he saw the defiance she had shown on the camera feed. The warning she'd given him. She'd faced death to warn him. "Elena," Marcus said. His voice was strangely gentle. "Close your eyes." Elena didn't question him. She squeezed her eyes shut. Bang! A single thunderous shot rang out. The grip on her neck loosened instantly. She felt a heavy weight slump against the back of her chair, then slide to the floor. Silence returned to the warehouse. "Cut her loose," Marcus ordered. Elena felt hands on her wrists, professional, efficient. The zip ties were snipped. She opened her eyes. Vincent was on the ground, a neat hole in the center of his forehead. Marcus was holstering his weapon. He walked over to her, took off his tactical gloves, reached out. His thumb gently wiped the blood from the cut on her neck. His touch was surprisingly warm. "You warned me, Bob," he said. He sounded genuinely baffled. "Waitress." Elena looked up at him, trembling uncontrollably now that the adrenaline was fading. Because I'm not a thief," she whispered, "and I'm not a liar." Marcus stared at her. The calculation was gone from his face, replaced by something intense, something dangerous in a different way. Possession. "No," he murmured. "You're certainly not." He scooped her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "Where are you taking me?" Elena asked weakly. Her head rested against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat. Strong, steady. "You saved my life, Elena, and you just started a war with the Caruso crime family." He walked out into the cool night air toward a waiting armored SUV. "You can't go back to your diner. You can't go back to your apartment." The doors closed, sealing them in together. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time since she'd met him, there was something in his eyes besides ice. "You belong to me now," Marcus said quietly, "until I say it's safe." Elena didn't know if that was a promise or a threat, but in the warmth of the SUV with his arm around her shoulders and the rain hammering on the roof, she realized something. Her old life was gone. The poor waitress who returned $10,000 had vanished the moment she'd made that choice. Who she would become next was entirely up to the man sitting beside her, the Mafia boss who had just killed to save her life. Elena woke up in a bed that was larger than her entire apartment. The sheets were Egyptian cotton. She knew because she'd seen them once in a magazine at the dentist's office. Cool, impossibly soft. The kind of fabric that whispered money with every movement. The smell of rust and blood was gone, replaced by lavender and rain. She sat up slowly. Her body ached. A deep, bruising soreness that radiated from her ribs to her neck. She looked down. She was wearing a silk pajama set, slate gray, expensive, beautiful. Her grease-stained uniform was nowhere to be seen. "You're awake?" Elena jumped. Marcus sat in a velvet armchair in the corner of the room, reading a tablet. He wore a crisp white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His forearms were corded with muscle and marked with faint scars. Old ones. The kind that told stories he probably wouldn't share. He looked less like a monster this morning, and more like a weary king. "Where am I?" Elena asked. She pulled the duvet up to her chin. "The penthouse," Marcus said simply. "Top floor of the Dante Tower. It's the safest place in Seattle." He paused. "Or at least it's supposed to be." He stood and walked over to the bed, moved with that same prowling grace that made Elena's breath hitch. He sat on the edge of the mattress. Not too close, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Elena admitted, "and then dropped off a cliff." "The doctor says you have bruised ribs and a mild concussion." Vincent was heavy-handed. Marcus's eyes darkened at the name. "He's no longer a problem." "I saw," Elena whispered. The memory of the gunshot was vivid. "You killed him." "He was going to kill you." Marcus's voice was void of apology. "It was a simple equation." Elena looked around the opulent room. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the Seattle skyline. Gray, weeping with rain. Always rain. "So what now? Can I go home?" Marcus sighed, rubbed his temples like he had a headache that wouldn't quit. "Elena, you don't seem to understand the gravity of what happened last night." He turned to face her fully. Vincent Caruso wasn't just a thug, he was the head of a family. His brother, Antonio Caruso, is now in charge. Antonio is smarter, Meaner, far more vindictive. You are the woman who lured his brother into a trap. You are the face of his humiliation. I didn't lure him. I was kidnapped. Antonio won't care about the details. He will want blood. If you go back to your apartment, you will be dead within the hour. Elena felt panic rising again. But my mom, I can't leave her. She's sick. She can't walk. If I'm not there to give her meds, to help her to the bathroom. She tried to scramble out of bed, ignoring the pain in her ribs. I have to go to her. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder, gently pushed her back down. Relax. It's handled. What do you mean handled? Your mother, Grace Carter, stage 4 rheumatoid arthritis and early onset heart failure. She was moved 3 hours ago to the St. Jude Private Care Facility on the east side. Elena stared at him, mouth open. You kidnapped my mother? I relocated her, Marcus corrected. She is in a private suite. She has 2 nurses assigned to her 24 hours a day. The best rheumatologist in the state is reviewing her file as we speak. He paused. And there are 2 armed guards outside her door who are paid very well to make sure no one named Caruso gets within a mile of her. Elena was stunned. Saint. Jude's was the kind of place senators sent their parents. It cost thousands of dollars a night. Why, she whispered. Tears pricked her eyes. Why would you do that? Marcus looked away, stared out at the rain-streaked window. He looked uncomfortable with the gratitude. You saved my life, Elena. I pay my debts. And besides, he looked back at her, his gaze intense. I couldn't have you worrying about her while you're staying here. Distractions get people killed. I'm staying here, Elena repeated. For how long? Until the war is over. Marcus's voice was grim. Until every Caruso is either in jail or in the ground. You are my guest, Elena, or my prisoner, depending on how you look at it. He stood and walked to the door. There are clothes in the closet. My stylist guessed your size. Breakfast is in the kitchen. Do not leave this floor. The elevator requires a retinal scan that only I have. Marcus, she called out before he could leave. He paused, in hand on the doorknob. Thank you. For my mom. Marcus didn't turn around. Don't thank me yet, Elena. Being in my world is not a gift. He opened the door. It's a curse. The door closed behind him. For the first 2 days, Elena barely saw Marcus. The penthouse was magnificent. A sprawling fortress of glass and steel, marble floors, modern art on the walls that probably cost more than her entire childhood. A kitchen with appliances she didn't know how to use. But it was lonely. She spent her time wandering the rooms, looking but not touching, afraid that her presence would somehow contaminate this perfect, sterile world. She called her mother every day on the secure line Marcus provided. Oh, honey, this place is like heaven, Grace gushed on day 3. They have yoga therapy. And the food. Elena, I had salmon for lunch. Real salmon, not the canned stuff. Elena smiled despite herself. I'm so glad, Mom. This new job of yours, this traveling assistant position, it must pay well. Elena's smile faltered. It does, Mom. It really does. She didn't have the heart to tell her mother the truth, that she was trapped in a penthouse with a man who killed people for a living, that she'd stumbled into a war she didn't understand, that she might never go home again. On day 4, Marcus came home early. Elena was in the kitchen, trying to cook pasta because she was tired of the chef's fancy meals. Tired of food that looked like art and tasted like obligation. She wanted comfort, simplicity, something real. She heard the elevator chime, turned to see Marcus standing there, tie loosened, jacket over his arm. He looked exhausted. You're cooking, he observed. It wasn't a question, just a statement. The chef made foie gras last night, Elena said. I just wanted spaghetti. Marcus walked to the kitchen island, sat on one of the leather bar stools, watched her. May I? Elena nodded. He stayed. They didn't talk at first. Elena focused on the pasta, on the simple tomato sauce she was making from canned tomatoes and garlic. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, just food. My father died in a construction accident, Elena said suddenly. She didn't know why she was telling him. 7 years ago, scaffolding collapsed. 3 men died. Marcus was silent for a long moment. I didn't know. You can't know everyone who dies for your empire. She didn't say it with malice, just fact. Marcus looked at his hands. I wish I could. Elena plated the pasta, put it in front of him. It was simple, honest, nothing like the meals his chef prepared. Marcus took a bite. It's good. It's pasta. It's better than good. They ate in comfortable silence, and for the first time since she'd met him, Elena saw something human in Marcus Dante's winter eyes. Late night. Elena couldn't sleep. The bed was too big, too soft, too quiet. She went to the library, found comfort in the rows of books. Most were business texts, crime novels. But tucked in the corner, she found something unexpected. The Art of Bread Making. A cookbook, well-worn, a bookmark at page 47. She pulled it out, flipped through the pages. Someone had made notes in the margins. Careful, precise. Couldn't sleep? Marcus stood in the doorway. He was wearing sleep pants and nothing else. His chest was marked with more scars. A long one across his ribs, a circular one near his shoulder that looked like a bullet wound. Too quiet, Elena admitted. Marcus walked into the library, poured himself a whiskey from the crystal decanter on the side table. You get used to it. Do you? He took a drink, didn't answer. Elena held up the cookbook. Yours? Marcus looked at the book like it was a ghost. My brother's, David. He wanted to open a bakery. Past tense. Wanted. What happened to him? Overdose. 5 years ago. Heroin. Marcus's voice was flat, like he'd said the words so many times they'd lost meaning. He didn't want to be part of the family business. Our father insisted. David found other ways to escape. He finished his whiskey in one swallow. I found him in the bathroom, called the ambulance. They said he was probably already gone, that there was nothing I could have done. He poured another drink. They were lying. There was something I could have done. I could have let him go, could have told our father to leave him alone, but I didn't. I was too much of a coward. Elena stood, walked over to him. You were a kid. I was 27, old enough to know better. Your father died the same time? Heart attack, at David's funeral. Maybe it was the grief, maybe it was guilt, I don't know. Marcus looked at her. I inherited an empire at 27 with zero preparation. 300 families depending on us, 50 businesses. A war with the Carusos that had been simmering for 15 years. He set down his glass. I hate this world, Elena, but I have to hold it up for everyone who depends on me. Sometimes I don't know if I'm strong enough. Elena reached out, took his hand. You are, because you're still trying. Marcus looked at their joined hands like he'd forgotten what human touch felt like. You should go to bed. But he didn't let go. Day 8 brought Julian Cross. Elena was in the library, organizing books by color, a nervous habit she couldn't shake. The elevator chimed, but it wasn't Marcus. The man who stepped out was older, late 40s, silver hair combed back perfectly, sharp features, wearing a suit that screamed old money and older power. He looked at Elena like she was a specimen under glass. You must be Elena Carter. His voice was smooth, cultured, dangerous in a way that was different from Marcus. I'm Julian Cross, Mr. Dante's advisor. Nice to meet you. Elena's instincts screamed that it wasn't nice at all. Marcus speaks highly of you. Julian walked into the library like he owned it, probably did in a way. It's rare for him to bring anyone here, to his private sanctuary. I'm just staying until it's safe. Of course, Julian smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Marcus is very protective, especially of people who've proven themselves loyal. He paused, let the word hang in the air. The last person he trusted like this was his brother. That didn't end well. Elena felt cold. I should go. Please, don't let me chase you away. Julian sat in one of the leather chairs. I'm just an old man who worries about Marcus. He's been through so much. His father, his brother, this war. He looked at her directly. He can't afford another betrayal. It would destroy him. The words were a warning wrapped in silk. After Julian left, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just been sized up and found wanting. The news came during dinner. Marcus's phone rang. He answered. His face went hard. When? Pause. How many? Longer pause. Pull everyone back to the core territories. Double the guards on the warehouses. He ended the call. What happened? Elena asked. 2 of our warehouses burned. Antonio's sending a message. Marcus stood, walked to the window, stared out at the city. He's testing me, seeing if I'll retaliate. Will you? If I do, we escalate. More people die. If I don't, he thinks I'm weak. More people die. He pressed his palm against the glass. There's no good move, just less bad ones. Elena walked over to him, stood beside him, looking out at the same city, the same rain. You'll figure it out. You have a lot of faith in a man you barely know. I know enough. Marcus turned to look at her. They were close. So close, she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, could smell the faint scent of his cologne. His phone rang again. The moment shattered. Marcus answered, walked away, and Elena was left standing by the window, wondering when she'd started caring about a man who killed people for a living. Julian came back. Elena had left her phone on the coffee table, the one Marcus had given her. Encrypted, secure, she'd gone to get water. When she came back, Julian was standing near the table, not touching the phone, but close enough. Oh, I was just admiring the view, he said smoothly, but Elena saw the calculation in his eyes. Later, she heard Julian talking to Marcus in the hallway. Have you checked her phone? I trust her. Julian's voice was patient, like talking to a child. That's a mistake, Marcus. A soft boss is a dead boss. Let me run a security check just to be safe. No. Marcus, I said no, Julian. But the seed was planted. Elena could see it in the way Marcus looked at her phone that evening, in the way his jaw tightened when it buzzed. Trust was a fragile thing, and Julian knew exactly where to apply pressure to make it crack. They cooked together. Elena taught Marcus how to make carbonara, real carbonara, eggs and cheese and pasta water. Nothing fancy. They stood side by side at the kitchen island, Marcus's sleeves rolled up, Elena guiding his hands as he whisked the eggs. Not too fast, you'll scramble them. I run a criminal empire. I think I can whisk eggs. Your empire doesn't require finesse. Marcus laughed, a real laugh, deep and genuine. They were close, hip to hip. His hand brushed hers as he reached for the pepper grinder. Elena looked up. He looked down. The air between them changed, heated, charged with something that had been building for 2 weeks. Marcus leaned down. Elena tilted her face up. His phone rang. Marcus jerked back like he'd been shocked. Answered the phone. His face went hard. Say that again. Pause. When? He looked at Elena, something dark in his eyes. I'll handle it. He ended the call. I have to go. Marcus, stay here. Don't open the door for anyone. He grabbed his jacket, headed for the elevator. Not even Julian. The doors closed, and Elena was alone again. Thursday afternoon. 2 weeks exactly since she'd found the money. Elena was in the library, organizing books by color. The same nervous habit, the same need to control something when everything else was chaos. The elevator chimed. Marcus stormed in. But something was wrong. His shoulders were tense. His jaw clenched. He radiated fury so sharp it made the air crackle. Julian followed behind him, holding a folder. Marcus? Elena stepped out of the library. Is everything okay? Marcus stopped in the middle of the living room. Didn't look at her. Couldn't. Pack your things. You're leaving. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? Is it safe? Is the war over? Marcus finally turned to her. His eyes were red-rimmed, filled with a mixture of rage and profound betrayal. The war isn't over, but your part in it is. He snatched the folder from Julian, threw it across the room. Papers scattered across the marble floor like dead leaves. Read it! His voice was a roar that echoed off the high ceilings. Elena trembled. She knelt, picked up a piece of paper. It was a bank statement, a wire transfer receipt. $50,000 transferred into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The account was under the name Elena Carter. The source of the funds was Caruso Construction Limited. The date was 3 days after Marcus had rescued her. I don't know what this is, Elena stammered. I don't have an offshore account. I've never been to the Cayman Islands. Don't lie to me. Marcus stepped closer. He looked like he was fighting the urge to destroy everything in the room. Julian found it, encrypted communications on your phone. You've been sending them my schedule. You told them about the warehouse drop. That's how Vincent knew to be there. No, that's insane. I warned you. I saved you. The perfect cover. Julian's voice was oily, smooth. Get captured, play the victim, save the boss to earn his trust. Then once you're inside the fortress, you feed Antonio Caruso everything he needs to dismantle us from the inside. He smiled thinly. It's a classic honey trap. Marcus, please. Elena reached for his arm. Marcus flinched away from her touch, like she was made of acid. Look at me. You know me. I wouldn't do this. I thought I knew you. Marcus's voice broke. I actually thought for the first time in my life that I could trust someone who wasn't on the payroll. He turned away, faced the window, hands clenched into fists at his sides. I let you in. I let you near my family's secrets. I protected your mother. My mother, Elena gasped. If I was working for the Carusos, why would I let you take my mother? Leverage, Julian answered smoothly, to make the con look real. Marcus was silent, staring out at the city. at the empire he'd built on blood and bones. I should kill you, he whispered. The rules say I have to kill you. The room went silent. Elena stopped breathing. But I can't. Marcus's voice was barely audible. God help me, I can't. He turned back, his face a mask of stone, but there was moisture on his cheeks. Just a hint. Just enough. Get out. Julian will drive you to the city limits. You have 1 hour to disappear. If I see you in Seattle again, if I even hear your name, he couldn't finish. I won't hesitate next time. Marcus, you're making a mistake, Elena cried. Julian is lying. He's setting me up. Julian grabbed Elena's arm. His grip was bruising. Come on, you heard the boss. He dragged her toward the elevator. Elena dug her heels in, looking back at Marcus, begging him with her eyes to see the truth. But Marcus didn't look up. He was staring at the floor, at the fake bank statement that had broken his heart. Julian shoved Elena into the elevator, pressed the button for the garage. As the doors slid shut, cutting off her view of Marcus, Julian leaned in close to her ear. You were making him soft, Julian hissed. A soft boss is a dead boss. I did what I had to do to save the family. Elena's eyes widened. You forged it. You forged everything. Julian smiled, thin, cruel. Of course I did. And tonight, while he's grieving his little betrayal, Antonio Caruso is going to hit the shipment at the West Docks. Marcus will be too distracted to see it coming. And when Marcus falls, I'll be there to pick up the pieces. The elevator dinged, garage level. Julian shoved her toward a waiting sedan. Get in. I'm dropping you at the bus station. If you're smart, you'll catch the first ride to Idaho and never look back. Elena sat in the back of the car, her mind racing. She was being discarded. She was safe. She could leave, could run away, could start over somewhere where no one knew her name. But she thought of Marcus, standing in that penthouse, alone, believing she had betrayed him, walking blindly into a trap that would kill him. She thought of the man who had sat on the edge of her bed and checked to see if she was okay, who had moved her mother to the best care facility in the city, who had looked at her in the kitchen like she was the first real thing he'd seen in years. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a hero. She was a waitress. But she loved him. The realization hit her harder than Vincent's fist. She loved Marcus Dante, and she wasn't going to let him die. Julian dropped her at the Greyhound station on Stewart Street. 8 p.m. He didn't even watch her go inside, just sped off, eager to get back to the slaughter he had orchestrated. Elena stood on the curb in the rain. She had no money, no phone, just the clothes on her back, the expensive designer jeans and sweater Marcus had bought her. She looked at the clock in the station window. 8:05. Julian had said the shipment was at the West Docks tonight. She had to warn him, but she couldn't call. Julian would screen the calls, or Marcus wouldn't answer. She had to go there, show him. She ran to the taxi stand. Please, she told the driver. West Docks, Pier 9. You got cow? The driver looked suspicious. Elena pulled off the diamond bracelet Marcus had given her. Just because. A week ago when she'd admired it in a shop window during a walk. Take this. Just drive fast. The driver's eyes bugged out. Yes, ma'am. The drive felt like an eternity. Elena stared out the window, watching the city blur. Please be late, she prayed. Please let me get there before the shooting starts. When they reached the industrial district, the roads became dark, empty. Warehouses loomed like skeletons. This is as far as I go, the driver said, pulled up to the chain-link fence of the shipping yard. I ain't getting involved in whatever happens back there. Elena jumped out. She could hear it already, shouting, engines revving. She squeezed through a gap in the fence, the same gap her father had used when he worked down here years ago. She ran through the maze of shipping containers, following the noise. She emerged into a clearing near the water. Chaos. Marcus was there, pinned down behind his black SUV. His men were outnumbered, 6 against 15. On the other side of the clearing, heavily armed men wearing red armbands advanced. Caruso's colors. And there, standing on a catwalk above the fray, was a man firing an assault rifle. Laughing. That must be Antonio Caruso. But where was Julian? Elena scanned the shadows. There, standing near the back of Marcus's formation, hiding behind a crate. He wasn't firing at the Carusos. He was raising his gun, aiming it at Marcus's exposed back. Marcus was focused on Antonio, on the men in front of him. He didn't see the knife in his own house. Elena didn't think. She screamed, Marcus! Her voice tore through the noise of the gunfire. Marcus turned, saw her. Confusion flashed across his face, then horror. Elena, get out of here! Julian pulled the trigger. Elena was already moving. She didn't calculate, didn't weigh the odds. She just threw herself forward, sprinted across the open ground with no cover, no protection. As Julian fired, Elena launched herself at Marcus, shoved him hard to the side. The bullet meant for Marcus's heart found her instead. The impact spun her around. It felt like being punched by a giant, followed by burning, searing heat in her shoulder. She collapsed onto the wet concrete, rain mixing with blood, washing it away as fast as it flowed. The last thing she heard was Marcus screaming, a sound of pure animalistic agony. And then the darkness came, soft, gentle, like falling asleep. The Reaper, time stopped. Marcus Dante caught Elena before her head hit the concrete, his arms wrapped around her small frame. Her blood was hot against his hands, spreading. Too much blood, too fast. He looked at the wound, shoulder, high, near the collarbone. Then he looked up, saw Julian. Gun still raised, smoke drifting from the barrel. The betrayal registered in Marcus's brain like a bomb going off. Julian, the man who had served his father for 25 years, who had taught Marcus to tie his tie when he was 12, who had stood at Lorenzo Dante's funeral and promised to protect the family. Julian had just tried to kill him, and Elena had taken the bullet instead. Something inside Marcus broke. Not broke, shattered, exploded, turned into shrapnel that tore through every civilized part of him and left only the raw, primal core. The part of him that was a Marine before he was a businessman. The part that had killed his first man at 18 in Fallujah. The part he'd spent 14 years trying to bury. That part rose up now, and it was hungry. Marcus laid Elena down gently, pressed his jacket against her wound. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Don't you dare leave me." Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. He stood, didn't take cover, didn't duck, just stood there in the open, fully exposed. A target. He didn't care. He pulled both Glocks from his holsters. His face was a mask of absolute terrifying fury. "Marcus!" one of his men shouted. "Get down!" Marcus didn't get down. He walked forward, raised both pistols, and became death itself, Julian. The first shot was for the traitor. Marcus turned, locked eyes with Julian across 30 feet of rain and chaos. Julian's face went pale. He raised his gun, tried to aim. Too slow. Marcus fired. One shot, center mass between the eyes. Julian's head snapped back. The gun fell from his fingers. His body crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. He was dead before he hit the ground. Marcus didn't pause, didn't check, didn't care. Julian Cross had ceased to exist, and Marcus had 14 more targets. The Caruso soldiers, the men in red armbands, saw him coming. Saw a man walking toward them through a storm of bullets. No fear, no hesitation, just cold mechanical precision. They fired. Marcus moved. Not fast, not desperate, just efficient, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. Because he had. He shot the first man twice. Chest, chest. The man dropped. Pivoted, shot the second. Head, clean. Third man, Mozambique drill. 2 chest, 1 head. Down. Fourth, fifth, sixth. Each shot perfectly placed. No wasted movement, no wasted ammunition. His men rallied behind him, pushed forward. The Caruso soldiers broke, started retreating, but there was nowhere to go. Marcus Dante was a reaper in a shipping yard, and he was harvesting souls. 7, 8, 9, 3 left. They dropped their weapons, raised their hands. "Please, we surrender." Marcus shot them anyway. Execution style, 1, 2, 3. The last one fell face first into a puddle, rain turning the water red. Silence fell over the docks, except for the rain. Always the rain, and one man laughing on the catwalk above. Antonio Caruso. Antonio Caruso stood on the metal catwalk, still holding his AR-15, still laughing. "Marcus Dante," he called down. "The legendary Ice King finally shows some heat." Marcus looked up, reloaded both pistols without looking down. Muscle memory. "Your brother was a coward," Marcus said. His voice was dead, empty. "Are you?" Vincent was impatient. "I'm smarter." Antonio aimed his rifle. "But we both want the same thing. You dead." He fired. The burst went wide. Marcus was already moving. Ran to the stairs, took them 3 at a time. Antonio kept firing. Bullets sparked off metal railings, ricocheted off containers. Marcus didn't slow down. He reached the catwalk. Antonio was reloading. Marcus shot him in the leg. Antonio screamed, fell. The rifle clattered away. He tried to crawl, dragging his shattered leg behind him. Marcus walked over, looked down at the man who had threatened to kill Elena, who had burned his warehouses, who had started a war over a grudge 15 years old. "This is for threatening what's mine," Marcus said quietly. He raised the gun. Antonio looked up, eyes wide with fear. Wait, we can make a deal. I have information. I have—" Bang! The shot echoed across the empty docks. Antonio Caruso stopped moving. Marcus holstered his weapons, turned, sprinted back down the stairs, back to Elena. She was so pale, lying there in the rain, his jacket soaked through with her blood, her chest barely rising. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, slid in the mud and the blood and the water. He gathered her into his arms, rocked her. "Elena," he begged. "Elena, look at me. Stay with me." Her eyelids fluttered. "Julian," she whispered. Blood bubbled on her lips. It was Julian. I know, baby. I got him. I got them all." Tears mixed with rain on Marcus's face. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you." Elena's lips curved into a faint smile. "It's okay. I told you. I'm not a thief." Her eyes rolled back. Her head lolled against his chest. No. Marcus pressed his fingers to her neck. Found a pulse. Weak. Thready. Fading. "Medic!" He screamed it at the sky. At God. At anyone who was listening. "Get a medic now!" His men came running. Someone was calling 911. Someone else was bringing a first aid kit. Marcus held her closer. Buried his face in her neck. She smelled like rain and blood and lavender. He'd never been a religious man. His father had beaten that out of him early. But he prayed now to whoever was listening, please don't take her. I'll do anything. Give anything. Just don't take her. "Don't you dare die," he whispered fiercely into her hair. "I still owe you $1,000. Sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer, but not close enough. Never close enough. Harborview Medical Center. The waiting room was a sterile purgatory of fluorescent lights and linoleum floors. For 18 hours, Marcus Dante paced. He'd changed out of his tactical gear. Someone had brought him a fresh suit, charcoal gray, the same color he'd been wearing the night he met her. He hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, had simply existed in a state of suspended terror. His men were stationed at every exit, every elevator, every stairwell. The hospital was on lockdown. The doctors were terrified, not of the men with guns, but of the man in the charcoal suit who had told the chief of surgery very quietly that if Elena Carter died, this hospital would burn, and everyone believed him. At 4 a.m., the double doors swung open. Dr. Aris stepped out, surgical cap in hand. He looked exhausted. Marcus stopped pacing. Couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. She made it. The air left Marcus's lungs in a rush. He staggered back a step, caught himself on a plastic chair. The relief was so violent it felt like physical pain. "The bullet missed the heart by centimeters," Dr. Aris explained. "It shattered the clavicle and nicked the subclavian artery. We had to perform a massive transfusion." He paused. "She's in a medically induced coma to let the swelling go down. But Marcus, she's a fighter. I've never seen vitals stabilize that fast." "When can I see her?" "She needs rest. The ICU is—" Marcus gave him a look that reminded the doctor exactly who owned the construction company that built this wing of the hospital. "Right this way, Mr. Dante." The ICU room was dim. Machines beeped steadily. Monitors displayed numbers that Marcus didn't understand but watched obsessively anyway. Elena looked small in the hospital bed. Swallowed by wires and tubes, her skin was the color of paper. A ventilator breathed for her. In, out, mechanical, reliable. Marcus pulled a chair to the bedside. He took her hand, the one that wasn't hooked up to an IV, pressed it against his forehead. "I'm here," he whispered into her palm. "I'm not going anywhere." And he didn't. For 6 days, Elena slept. And while she slept, Marcus Dante went to work. But not with guns, with a phone and a pen. He dismantled the Caruso empire piece by piece. With Vincent dead and Antonio gone, the organization was headless, leaderless, vulnerable. Marcus absorbed their territories, not with violence, with commerce. He bought their debts, hired their soldiers, offered them better deals than the Carusos ever had. By day 3, the streets were quiet. By day 5, the FBI had arrested 47 Caruso associates on RICO charges. The war was over. On day 4, Marcus left the hospital for 2 hours. He drove to St. Jude Private Care Facility, sat by Grace Carter's bedside. Grace was awake, alert, better than she'd been in years. "You're Marcus," she said, not a question. "Yes, ma'am." "Elena talks about you in her calls." Grace looked at him with eyes that were the same warm brown as her daughter's. "She says you saved her life." Marcus looked at his hands. "She saved mine first." Grace smiled. "Tell me about my daughter, when she was young." And Marcus listened to stories about Elena at 7, bringing home stray cats, feeding them with her own lunch money, about Elena at 15, working 3 jobs to help pay bills after her father died, about Elena at 20, dropping out of college to take care of her mother full-time. "She's always been saving people," Grace said softly. "It's who she is." Marcus thought about a woman who had spent her whole life putting others first, who had returned $10,000 she desperately needed, who had taken a bullet for a man who had thrown her away. He thought about what he'd almost lost, and he made a decision. On day 6, Marcus broke down. 3 a.m. alone with Elena. The nurses had learned not to disturb him during these hours. He held her hand and cried. For the first time since his brother died, since his father died, since he'd been forced into a life he never wanted, he cried. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I let Julian poison my mind. I'm sorry I almost lost you because I was too damaged to trust." He pressed her hand to his lips. "I love you. I know you can't hear me, but I love you, and if you come back to me, I promise I'll be better. I'll be the man you deserve." The machines beeped. Elena didn't stir, but somewhere deep in her unconscious mind, maybe she heard him, because on the morning of day 7, everything changed. The rain stopped. For the first time in 2 weeks, the sun broke through the Seattle gray. A beam of light fell across the hospital bed, warm, golden. Elena's finger twitched. Marcus was dozing in the chair. He'd finally allowed himself to close his eyes for just a moment. He snapped awake instantly. Elena. Her eyelashes fluttered. She groaned, a low sound of discomfort. Then her eyes opened, hazy at first, confused, the lingering fog of medication and trauma. But they found him immediately, focused, sharpened. "Marcus," she croaked. Her voice was wrecked from the intubation. Raw, beautiful. "I'm here," he said. He leaned in, close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. "Don't try to talk, just breathe." She blinked, memories flooding back. The docks, the gun, Julian. "Did you?" She tried to sit up. Marcus gently pressed her back down. "Are you okay?" Marcus let out a choked laugh. Tears spilled over his lashes. "Am I okay? You took a bullet for me, Elena. You almost died. And you're asking if I'm okay?" "You looked sad," she mumbled. Marcus kissed her knuckles, over and over. "I'm not sad anymore. I'm yours. Do you hear me? I am entirely, completely yours." Elena smiled, weak but real. "Does that mean I get a raise?" Marcus laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that banished the shadows in the room. "We can discuss your compensation package later." He pressed the call button for the nurse, but he didn't let go of her hand, not for a long time. The bell above the door at Frank's diner jingled. Frank was behind the grill, scraping grease, miserable as always. The lunch rush was over. The diner was empty except for a few regulars nursing coffee. "We're closed for cleaning," Frank barked, without looking up. "Funny," a deep voice said. "The sign says open 24 hours. Frank spun around. The color drained from his face. Marcus Dante stood in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. Next to him, looking radiant in a cream-colored cashmere coat, was Elena. Her arm was still in a sling, but she looked healthy, glowing. Happy in a way Frank had never seen in all the years she'd worked here. "Elena," Frank stammered, "I haven't seen you in months. You just walked out on a shift. I should have fired you." "Actually, Frank," Marcus stepped forward, placed a document on the counter. "You're the one being fired." "What?" Frank squinted at the paper. It was a deed of sale. "I bought the building," Marcus said casually, "and the business, this morning. Overpaid for it too, but I'm feeling generous." Frank looked from Marcus to Elena. "You bought the diner?" "Technically, I bought it." Marcus turned to Elena. "But I'm gifting it to the new owner." Elena's eyes went wide. "You didn't. You said you wanted to open a bakery." Marcus shrugged. "This place has a great industrial oven. It just needs, well, it needs to be burned down and rebuilt, essentially. But the location is good." He turned back to Frank. "Pack your things. You have 10 minutes." Frank didn't argue. He grabbed his coat and ran out the back door like the devil himself were chasing him. Elena walked behind the counter, ran her hand over the chipped formica, over the coffee stains that would never come out, over the ghosts of 1,000 shifts. This place had been her prison for 5 years. Now it was her kingdom. She looked at table 4, the table where it all started. Marcus walked over to it, pulled out his money clip, the same platinum clip he'd had that first night. He peeled off 10 $100 bills, fanned them out on the sticky table surface. "What are you doing?" Elena asked. She walked over to him, returning the investment. Marcus pulled her close with his free arm, careful of her injury. "That night, I left $1,000 on this table by mistake. I thought it was the worst mistake of my life when I realized it was gone." He looked deep into her eyes. "But it turns out it was the best deal I ever made." "Why?" Elena asked, teasing him. "Because you got your money back?" "No," Marcus leaned down, his lips brushing hers. "Because for $1,000 I bought a second chance at life, and I found a queen to rule this city with." Elena smiled, threaded her fingers through his hair, the dark strands now showing more silver at the temples. "Stress, or maybe just time. I'm going to make this the best bakery in Seattle, Marcus. I'm going to make you fat on croissants. I look forward to it." He kissed her then, not the kiss of a mafia boss claiming a prize, but the kiss of a man who had been lost in the dark for a long time and had finally found his way home. Outside, the rain began to fall on the Seattle streets, but inside the diner, under the buzzing neon light, everything was warm. The bakery opened on a Tuesday. Elena's Artisan Breads. Simple name. Honest, like everything about her. The line stretched around the block. Marcus stood behind the counter with her, wearing an apron that said Head of Security that Elena had made for him as a joke. He wasn't joking about the security part. There were still people who remembered the Caruso War, who held grudges, but the streets were quiet now. Marcus had kept his promise. He'd stepped back from the violent side of the business, handed operations to younger men who understood that the world was changing. He focused on the legitimate enterprises, construction, real estate, investments. The Dante name was slowly being rebuilt, not as crime lords, but as philanthropists. The David Dante Foundation provided scholarships for at-risk youth, funded addiction recovery programs, built community centers in neighborhoods that needed them. Marcus had found a way to honor his brother's memory and to atone for his own sins. Grace Carter sat in a wheelchair near the window, smiling, stronger than she'd been in years. The medications were working, the physical therapy was working. She wouldn't walk again, but she was alive, alert, happy, and she was about to become a grandmother. Elena touched her stomach, still flat, only 3 months along. But growing, Marcus noticed. He always noticed. He put his hand over hers. "You okay?" "Perfect." And she meant it. The customer at the counter was Old Man Patterson, the landlord who had threatened to evict them. He didn't recognize Elena at first. When he did, his face went red. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, "about before. I didn't know." "It's okay, Mr. Patterson." Elena handed him a croissant. "First one's free." He took it, looked at her like she was crazy. Then he tasted it. His eyes widened. "This is incredible." Elena smiled. "Thank you. Come back anytime." As Patterson left, Marcus whispered in her ear, "You're too kind to him. He's just a man doing his job. We all make mistakes." "You never did." "I made one," Elena said. She turned to look at him. "I fell in love with a dangerous man." "Was that a mistake?" "The best one I ever made." They kissed across the counter, and the line of customers smiled, because everyone loves a love story, especially one that starts with $1,000 and a choice. The choice to be honest when dishonesty would have been easier. The choice to warn someone who had hurt you. The choice to take a bullet for someone you loved. And the choice to forgive, to trust, to build something new from the ashes of something broken. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. No rain, just light, falling on a city that was learning, slowly, to heal, and on two people who had found each other in the darkness and chosen against all odds to walk into the light together. The poor waitress had returned the money, but she had kept the heart of the man who left it, and that was a fortune that no amount of money could ever buy. Honor, it turned out, was forever. Just like her father had said, the end.